What up, people? Welcome to the Push Wild Black Show. I'm your host, Christian, and this show is a little different from what I usually podcast on. My YouTube audience knows about this section of the show. This is going to be my first advocacy podcast that I've done in a couple of years. The first advocacy podcast that's going to actually be a podcast. The first couple were on the YouTube channel, and this was strictly YouTube. My guest today is Kingsley Ogbogu. He started a new project called Disability Rights Roundtable. I'm going to be part of the project. This is an extension of his Moses Resource Center, which is an organization that helps disabled people specifically with employment, but other issues as well. And we're going to go into that in this conversation. We're going to talk about our struggles in employment. We're going to have it's a really interesting conversation. I've known this brother for 17 years, and we've always kind of bantered back and forth about disability rights and jobs and stuff, and you'll get some of that here. But I basically just wanted to get him space to talk about this roundtable project that he's trying to do, which I'm going to be a part of, and we'll go from there. This was a really good conversation. I just kind of wish that his phone was a little better and we were able to get him on a better sounding. The phone was clear. I just wish it was a little higher. But anyway, it's still a good conversation, and it's a good prequel to what he's trying to do, and we'll be starting in the next couple of weeks. So anyway, enjoy the show, y'all. Later. Kingsley, you have the floor, man. What seems to be the problem today?
Oh, all right, people. My name is Kingsley, owner and founder of Moses Resource Center. Just to give you a little background about my organization, what we do is we help people with disabilities find employment, get the necessary resources they need that they may be having trouble with through the government, such as SSI, SSDI. Food stamps, what have you, or point them in the right direction, but mostly try to empower them to find work. So over my years of developing Moses Resource Center, we were actually founded in 2013, I noticed that there was another need to really speak on some issues that I've been seeing in my 37 years of life that really should be addressed, but are kind of somewhat talked about, but not really. So I decided to do this program. It's going to be like a weekly program, and then we'll see how it goes, maybe more. It's going to be called State of the Disabled Population. And what that's going to consist of is, like a weekly talk show talking about issues that affect us as disabled people and what can be done or how we can sort of bring it to the light to sort of solve this issue and bring together our collective resources, our ideas. To understand we have a lot out there, but some of these issues need to be addressed, and everybody's kind of scared to do it. So anyway, the issue that I've been talking about this week a little bit, give you a little teaser, and we'll go more into it. It's working in both. I work in both sectors, both the private sector and the public sector. So I've been on both sides of the fence, and I know how trying those issues can be for somebody with a disability. I have cerebral palsy. I've had it all my life. So, I know how it is. And I know several other people have what I have, other issues, and they do what they do and try to make it through. So the issue that I was going to talk about today is, when you're in the federal government and you feel that you've had some issues, like you need to get an accommodation. There was an issue from my personal experience that I came across several years ago working for the federal government, one agency. We're not going to mention them, I don't put them out there like that, but this agency was an agency that was charged in making sure that discrimination of all people, whether you're disabled or not disabled, across the board doesn't happen in companies. So that's what their job was, to make sure that this doesn't happen, or if there's an allegation or claim of discrimination, whether they're not getting paid right, or they're not receiving the accommodations they need for the job, that this organization will come in and help them try to resolve the issue. So to my surprise, I was working for this agency back in 2012, and I was an administrative assistant, and then working for them, and I've been doing a really great job. But due to my severity of my disability, I required some accommodations. A lot of you with disabilities may be familiar with, like if you have motor functions, you can't really type fast. So I can really type fast. I was reading this software called Dragon Natural Mood Speaking, and also just a comfortable chair with lumbar support. Because if you're like me with cerebral palsy or some kind of muscular impairment or motor functioning ability, you need something to sort of help you with your back and release the pain. So anyway, I was needing those accommodations for the job, working for this public sector organization. But to my surprise, they really didn't seem like they were that open to provide it. So I was there on a temporary basis, and then long story short, after about 4 or 5 months, I was being suddenly told.
You are an intern, right? If I remember correctly, you were an intern, right? Because I was working for the federal government as a full-time employee, and you was an intern.
I was an intern, but of course it was, from what I was told from the head director, like the supervisor that worked for the agency, and she said it was an intern. It was temp to perm, so it was internship temporary, but it would transition into a permanent position. Matter of fact, she had mentioned another individual, his name was Brandon, and he came from temporary to permanent, and he now works for that agency at a GS-12 level. So that program that I was in, he was in WRP. I came out that program too. You were in WRP, just like I was in WRP. We both graduated college. I'm setting it up. I'm setting it up. There's a program that disabled college students get. They get exposed to. It's every summer. The Workforce Recruitment Program is a government initiative where they have disabled college students. They do internships every summer, and basically the interns, a lot of them they get a chance to go because a lot of the government jobs are in like DC and on the East Coast. So sometimes they give you a housing voucher so you can have like housing next to the agency, and they set you up with your internship is paid, and they set you up based on your skills and based on your education at the time. They set you up with a internship, and it's sort of on the GS scale. So it's not like you're getting paid like $9 an hour. You're actually getting paid decent money for however long you're working. Like when I started WRP my sophomore year of college, or my sophomore junior year of college. When you transfer, you lose credits. So I started there. I didn't work there because of paperwork problem, and I did WRP for 2 summers. I worked for an agency out in Texas, which shall remain nameless because I have thoughts with the federal government as far as employees as well. And I ended up transitioning from an internship to they actually hired me, but there was no promise of a full-time position. They actually hired me after my second internship when I graduated college. So he was under the same program. Matter of fact, we worked with the same. You worked with the same counselor I did, right? something like that. Well, I worked for two different companies. I worked for
Not the government agency. I'm talking about the count. I'm talking about you worked from WRP. You worked with the same counselor I did, right?
I've met her. I don't know if I worked with the same counselor. Well, I know her. Well, I was little. Yeah, I know her, but I don't know that. I met her, but we didn't like work a lot together. But I know where you're going. But yeah, I met her. We talked somewhat. But my path was I talked with her, and I started. The lady that I talked to with this other government organization before I got to APIS, and I did go to WRC and did that a little bit. But there was also another program that I did. I was fortunate to do. So that was with this other agency I worked for, and then I did the WRP and spoke with the lady you're talking about and did that. So I've actually been on both sides of the government. You know, there's two different. If you don't know, there are actually two different scales of the government, which I found out. One scale is the WG scale that he was under with the lady that I met, and me and him both know. And I was also on the other scale, which is the GS scale, which is the really nice money that you're making. So there are two different scales. A lot of people may not know. So he was on the WG. My friend Christian was on WG, and I was on that for a little bit, but I was also on the GS scale, which is like more money. So I've been on both scales, and I've met with the lady that my friend Kristen's talking about. And so, yeah, I've been through both of those. And there's a debate here, people, that some people say, well, maybe private, public sector jobs, that's not it. We should have other opportunities outside of the public sector to work in the private sector, which I agree. But I'm more of a realist. My friend Christian here. This is what I'm going to talk about.
Let's go into that like for 30 seconds. My whole thing is we get sheltered, we get shifted because we're disabled. And see what people don't understand is government jobs work like this, and this is especially true under the Obama administration. There's a percentage of disabled employees that every government agency should have. Before the Obama administration, there was 2%, and now it's 7%. So I remember working with, because when I was at University of Texas at Dallas, there was an employment specialist that worked with people with disabilities. She was a DARS counselor. She's a former DARS counselor. I remember when I was working with her, she was always telling me about or instilling the virtues of working in the federal government and in the public sector. So you think that when you go to these job fairs specifically dealing with government jobs and private sector jobs or public sector jobs, they have these departments, and they have these departments, and they have these workers that approach you when you're disabled, and they're like, "Oh, we can get you a job. We can do this, da da da," because they get because both government jobs and private sector jobs, they get tax breaks. The public sector jobs take advantage of, but they sell it as it's the right thing to do. We see your potential and da 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 da, right? So we get shifted to these agencies to work, and a lot of disabled people feel like Kingsley does. A lot of disabled people feel like, hey, this is the way for disabled people that can work to be able to work and make a stable income. My only thing, and this is where this will be talked about in Kingsley's project that he's going to head. I worked for the federal government for 4.5 years. And the idea that, the idea that like they're doing it because it's the right thing to do. No, they're doing it because you get tax breaks for that. Matter of fact, when I was an intern for 2 years, they weren't even paying my salary. The federal government was. That initiative, WRP, DC was. They were paying my salary. When I got in the federal government as a full-time employee, for 2 years, it was awesome. The last 2.5, I dealt with racism. I dealt with ableism. Everything that you deal with everything that you deal with as a black person, in corporate America, I dealt with. Everything you deal with as a disabled person in corporate America, I dealt with. My thing, and I worked in I worked in the private sector as well. When I worked in the private sector, I got more money and dealt with a lot less racism and a lot less ableism. So the idea that we're just supposed to work for the federal government, or we're supposed to get a government job, and that's supposed to be the way of the future for disabled people that can work, I find ridiculous. I find that the Americans with Disabilities Act has been in existence for almost 30 years. And we should be able to, right, and we should be able, right, we should be able to get access to more jobs instead of just working for the federal government. You make a third less money work as a government employee than you do in the private sector. Okay, man. Before I go into this tangent, continue what you were saying. But yeah, that's the debate that me and you have, and me and a couple other people have in regards to this. No, I don't believe we should just settle for working for the federal government like that. I don't, because I feel like as a disabled black man, I should have the same opportunities as my able-bodied counterparts do. And I feel like the fact that we get shuttled into these government jobs where there's a lie of it's going to be better, and it's not.
Right. And I mean, and so like I'm saying, I agree we should as disabled people have, the option to work in the private sector, And so, but the thing that, again, my point is, coming back to reality, even though in a perfect world, we should have the same opportunity as others to work in the private sector, which I agree with. But of course, due to some limitations, and, we can't all, of course, like, drive UPS trucks and make a bunch of money, or drive, trucks and go cross country. And truck drivers, get your CDL license, you can make $80,000 to $90,000 a year driving a truck. That's in the private sector, make great money. But we're disabled, so that's where I say, you gotta be realistic sometimes as far as your limitations. And my friend Christian here, he tried, went out in the public sector and tried to be in his field, but because just what I've experienced being out in the public sector, I knew it was going to be hard.
I worked, Kingsley, I worked in the federal government, in my field. I dealt with racism. Kingsley, I worked in the federal government for 4 years. In my field, I dealt with racism. I dealt with ableism. I dealt with people that didn't want me there. I dealt with people that because the agency in question, they made their own money. So what was it? What was the name of the scale? You referenced it earlier.
The WG scale.
WG scale. So they make their own. So they make their own money. They earn their own money. Normally government agencies are funded by the federal government, specifically Department of Justice or whatever. So the government funds all the government jobs. That's why when furloughs happen, like, the employees go home, or the employees work without payment, and then they do a back end and they pay you all your hours up front. Well, when the furlough hit us, we still had to go to work like nothing happened. Like, it wasn't we didn't take days off. Like, when the government shut down, we didn't take days off. We still went to work. I dealt with the argument that me and you have, the discussion that me and you have, because I worked in both sectors. I worked both in the private sector, and I worked for the government, and I worked for the state. So I have a little bit more experience working than you do. There's no difference. There's no difference. If you, like, we've both done customer service jobs together. You've made more money in the public sector. I've made more money in the public sector. I mean, in the private sector. I've made more money not working for the federal government than working for the federal government. Period. I just have. I've dealt with less racism working outside of the federal government, and I in a state job because I worked for a university. Dealt with a lot less racism. You go in. I worked in the federal government, and I dealt with racism, and I dealt with ableism. I dealt with people that said I shouldn't be in the job. I dealt with people that said one of my biggest frustrations was when you work for the federal government, you grade chase. Every job that you have, and this is on both sides. Every job that you have a grade assigned to it. They put you in a position, they start you in a grade, and then you can get stuck in the grade. And this is what happened. I got stuck in a grade. They basically put me in a position that on paper I wasn't doing. They refused to write my actual position out, and they refused to pay me the money that I was owed. That's my issue with them. And it happens to a lot of other people. We get frustrated being in our position. And then when you go to the private sector, you have an opportunity to make more money. Now, what they don't want to tell, what people, the thing that's missing here, I didn't try to go out and, I didn't leave voluntarily. I got rifted. And I got out there and I went ahead and I tried to do, and they let me go. Government agency that I worked for, they let me go. And then I went out there and I tried to get my field in the private sector. It didn't work, but then I kind of, but then I swapped careers. And I ended up making more money.
Swap careers for, but yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. We can do that. I mean, but we got to make a choice. What, the state of the rap is going to be about. We don't really, and I mean, this can go, not just people too, but more so we have a hard time. If we decide to go outside of the public sector and the private sector, we don't really have that many options. Like, you go to school for something, and I know, all of you probably heard, like, you don't always get the job that you went to school for. You have to, sometimes life throws your curveball and you have to change. So I'm not saying that doesn't happen with disabled people. It does. But what I'm saying is when we have to change and we're throwing a curveball, it's like the options that we have are very, very few. So what my friend Chris is talking about here, he left the public sector and went in the private sector, and then was out of this field, did customer service and made a lot of money. Now I'm saying I could probably do that too, but in fact, there's a company that's in the private sector that I could probably go to and make a decent amount of money. But I would be pigeonholed in that type of environment, and I wouldn't be able to get out. That would be what I would do probably in the foreseeable future. What I'm saying is that's the thing with the private sector. When you get out and you can make more money in the private sector, yes, but you're going to be pigeonholed in one particular job. You can't really go out of that, and that's going to be it. But at least in the public sector, I'm not saying you're not easy. So there are, there's grade chasing and what have you. But if you look at the public and the private side by side, what I see at least is in the public sector, we call it grade chasing, and you try to get to the next step or next level. In the private sector, what do we call it, people? We call it climbing the ladder. So you have to climb the ladder in the private sector, and then you have to climb the ladder.
And it's easier to climb the ladder in the private sector. It is.
Not necessarily.
It is. This is a person, again, folks. This is a person that worked for the federal government for 4.5 years, and have friends that still work there, and it took them 10 years to get, and it took them 10 years to get to the point where they at, and it's like it took them 10 years or 11 years to get to the point where they at. After 4 years for me, I was basically, after 2 years of the process, I was basically like, this is stupid, I want to go. But I was scared to leave, because a lot of disabled people, once they get a job, they're scared to leave a bad situation, because like Kingsley was saying, he has, like we don't have any options. Like for 2 years, I was scared to leave the job, because I was like, well, I'm never gonna get a job that pays that much money. You know what I'm saying? Because the jobs that I had before was, when I worked for the state, it was maybe like $8 an hour, because I was still in school, so it was part time. And then I was working retail, for maybe like the holiday season or whatever. So then when you have a job where you're gainfully employed, and then that job becomes impossible, because that job was impossible for me. You're scared that you're gonna leave, because you feel like this is the only option. And then when I got rifted, and if you don't know what a rift is, like when a government agency does a rift, they basically, your job gets put on the chopping block. And basically they tell you, like, at the end of a certain amount of time, for me it was 6 months, at the end of 6 months your job goes away. And then after your job goes away, you either can take this settlement money, which they offered me a set, huh? They offered me, they could, but they could find me another job, but there's no guarantee that they would have. So, you know, it's like I got rifted, and I decided to take the money. Now, there was a few months of aimlessness, because I couldn't get back in my field as a graphic designer. Couldn't get back in my field on staff. And then, like, I was like, okay, my brother told me, hey man, because he had a friend with cerebral palsy. By the way, me and Kingsley both have cerebral palsy. For those that didn't know, my brother had another friend with cerebral palsy that worked in a call center. He was like, hey, why don't you link up with so and so you can do a call center thing. And I had the same issues that Kingsley has. Like, a lot of people with cerebral palsy have motor difficulty in their hands, so we don't really type that fast. So there's a typing exam that you have to take every call center job. So I didn't want to. I was like, man, I'm not gonna do well. So that little networking situation with my brother's friend didn't work out. But what I ended up doing was, I ended up working for the same company, or I ended up interviewing for the same company. And then they basically told me what I needed to do to be, like, I needed to put in like a year's worth of work to work at that particular company. So I was like, okay. So basically I did some jobs here or there, did collections, whatever, for cheap money, and got my year in. Worked with Kingsley, because Kingsley got a job. We were doing insurance, and then boom, my biggest check was working there.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying here, people. Is working with private sector can be lucrative and can be good for disabled people, but you have to have good connections. You have to have a good rapport, with the people in the company for them to at least give you a shot. So again,
that's everybody though. All right, man. So what? Okay, so what is the problem now? What is the problem now? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to do now?
Right. So that was a little background story. But yeah, the issue now that I'm seeing, there are some things that come up against. And so when I was in the public sector, in private sector, I encountered that I was kind of shocked that they didn't want to accommodate me and give me the accommodations I need in order to be successful at the position. Which, of course, the ABA that was written almost 30 years ago now, that's been on the books, which is what I'll talk about in my next state of the roundtable, is kind of there as an outline, but doesn't really have any teeth or enforcement. Just to my surprise, when I was getting accommodations, things like dragging, naturally speaking, dictation, in order to allow me to be able to perform my duties a little bit more effectively because I was an administrative assistant. The organization and the public sector didn't really want to approve that, and they didn't want to give me the chair that I needed for my lower lumbar support, which again, these are all common, reasonable accommodations. So long story short, they didn't want to do it, and they eliminated my position, made up a story, and then so while I was there, I applied for positions which I was qualified for, and then they were just mad and I didn't get it. So I felt that what they did to me, and I encourage other people that are disabled, if you feel like what was done to you, or both disabled and non-disabled, if you feel, but more so with us, because we require a little bit more accommodations for him, and if you feel that you were treated somehow that you don't think was appropriate, or you think maybe, not right, or might possibly be illegal, you should definitely look at your options, and if you feel that you may need to file a claim of discrimination based on your disability, your race, your gender, you should go ahead and do that. So, for the last few years or so, I went ahead and did that because I felt the way that I was treated by this government organization that is assigned to, look out for people that are disabled and non-disabled, and employees, didn't really do their job. They dropped the ball. So I went ahead and did that and tried to resolve the issue with this public organization.
So you filed a grievance.
Yeah, I filed a grievance. Yeah, filed a grievance, and thinking that they would want to resolve it as quickly as possible and fix the issue. They have been kind of stonewalling and dragging us out.
Did you mention that you applied for for a position, and you asked for accommodations during that process? Could you go into that, please?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I applied for a position within that organization, which was just my position, I believe, and I needed the dragging software for the typing test, which this is another thing that I.
Could you go into Kingsley? Go into what exactly Dragon Naturally Speaking does. We in the disabled community already know what it is, but just
right. It is a voice dictation software that, like I was mentioning, it goes by your voice. So you basically talk, and then it learns your speech pattern, and it dictates what you say on a Word document or any kind of micro office suite like PowerPoint or something like that. It just makes it easier for us to get what we need down. So when I applied for the position, they had me do a typing test. Again, this is a public organization, and I told them I need this dragging software in order to do it. They had it available because it's a government agency. They had it on the 6th floor or something like that, and they were saying that they couldn't provide it at the time. Long story short, I did everything else on the interview, but I couldn't do that, and then I was told that I didn't get the position due to my, I guess they said I wouldn't able to finish the essay or whatever. And
so you had an interview, and then as part of the interview, was it like an exam, or did you have to provide a writing sample? Go into that a little bit more.
Yeah, it was an essay. That's what I was saying. It was an essay that I had to do, and they just needed an essay to see how. They gave me a scenario, and they said, okay, person A has this issue, and how would you resolve it? What would be your path in resolving it? And tell us the steps you would do to resolve the issue. Something like you would get in an essay or whatever. You'd have a problem, think your way how you're going to solve it, and I was able to do that. I did it, but because I had to type it, it took a little bit longer because it was timed. So I only had 15 minutes to do it. And, so it took me a little bit longer. I got it done, but I had swelling hair, and I was kind of uncomfortable, but I got it done. But I was kind of in shock that the public organization is supposed to, be more open to providing didn't provide the accommodation that I needed, which is just kind of a little disappointing. But again, I'm not trying to throw a blanket statement that all public organizations are like that. This particular one was, and I think it's because of bad management and people you have in public organizations. Sometimes don't really, they're not really understanding of people with disabilities. And I've been fighting for the last several years here to make it, to require people, in management positions to be more open and understanding of people with disabilities.
We both have. That's been both of our goals, because like I've always told you, man, there's no class. Just like people get these HR positions, these human resources positions, and there's no like class. How many situations have you been on where they don't, like, people don't even know what the Americans with Disabilities Act is?
I've been on several jobs. Like going back to the private sector for a minute. Yeah, there was an instance where I was meeting from a combination of this private sector job that me and my friend Kristen both worked at. And I talked to one of their HR people, this lady, and I said, okay, I'm needing an accommodation for paratransit, which is, paratransit is in the Dallas area. That's the handicapped accessible transportation from point A to point B. And so it has its problems too, and I'm going to have a story about that too. But in my situation in the private sector, I needed to have my cell phone available towards close to the end of my shift, or sometimes maybe in the middle when they would call, because with this service they'll call you 5 minutes ahead of time before they show up, or they'll show up and then they'll tell you you have 5 minutes to get out there. If you don't answer, then you have 5 minutes and then they'll leave, and then you may not be able to get another ride booked until like 2 hours later. And that's happened to me several times because of the way the system is set up. It's a share ride program, which share ride means because we got to pick up everybody else in the community. And if you miss your allotted time, you may not get picked up again for a while, which has happened a lot for me. So I told the HR lady in this private sector company, her name is Crystal. And
just put names out there, huh?
Yeah. I'll just throw her first name out there. I didn't put her last name out there. But her first name is Crystal. I'll just tell you that this HR person is a young lady. So I don't know, because of her age, she might have been a little ignorant of the.
We'll just go. She's just young and just didn't know.
Yeah. She was just young and maybe she didn't know. But the comment that she made, again, it's an HR person, and their duty is to be aware of situations going on with employees. Matter of fact, she was HR, but they slapped another title on it and said employee relations. So, what does that kind of mean, people? Employee relations with employees? Well, this Crystal had no kind of sense of what employee relations meant. And the only thing that was, and in my conversations with her, she was just very unknowledgeable about the situation and just made some comments about people.
Didn't she say you thought you were special, which is a common that's a common trope that HR professionals use. You think you're special, like this isn't this isn't school, dear.
Exactly. It's not school. I'm on the job. Me and my friend Christian, we've been on jobs. This is a job. I'm getting paid to do a job. And I'm telling you, human relations plus HR person, what accommodation I'm needing so I don't get left when my shift is over. And her response, instead of saying, oh, okay, I'm so sorry this is happening, because if I'm an HR person, which that may be my next role, because HR people seem not to know this, she would make that comment, that flippant comment, where you think you're special. And I don't know what made her think that she had any right to talk to me in that manner.
Ableism. That is just, especially like with the person. I'm going to bring this up. She was black. You're black. Black people and ableism, they just don't. They don't mix. Like it just doesn't. it just doesn't mix. That's just something that I've been noticing in the past 10 years of my life. Just black people really don't understand what ableism is unless you're disabled.
Yeah.
It's weird. So it's like when they come across a thing, because I have a theory that black people are so traumatized by racism, that's all they see. That's the only ism that they see. So any other discrimination that there is, they don't understand it, because it's well, we all black, so it's hard for everybody. Nah, it isn't. It isn't as hard in the world as you think it is for you, because you can walk around and you don't have any disabilities that you deal with. It's more difficult for me and other people. But I digress. Continue, story.
Yeah, we don't want to get because we have to both go on about that. But yeah, so I'm just thinking, because as African Americans, we went through the stain of that kind of racism, the color of your skin. That's the only thing we really African Americans see, but they fail to realize that there is the ableism aspect that comes out when you're disabled, and they don't get it until they're disabled, and then they say, "Oh,
now I understand. So, I get it now."
Yeah, now I understand. Yeah, after they've gone through that traumatic situation, and now they can't do anything.
Or they're with you and they see it, and it's like, "Oh, I know what you're talking about now." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not crazy, am I?" No, I understand. That happens to me all the time.
Right.
Like you're out in the world with somebody that's able-bodied, and then you experience ableism, and it's like, oh, the person that you're with is like, oh, now I know what you're talking about. Yeah, you thought I was just an angry black man, wasn't it?
Right, exactly. And then once when they see it when they're with you, then they're like, oh, okay, so you was making that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just when you didn't get it, made that specific content that I thought I was special. And when I tell these people that just kind of hurt me to the core, because I'm thinking, we're both, Afro-American, so racism is not a made-up thing. It exists, I don't think she can understand my situation, but again, she didn't get it. And long story short, I had to fight in the private sector, so I didn't, we're over in county private sector, and it might be great because we can make more money. It's true, but the racism can be there as well. So yeah, I had to fight and then go over her head to her boss, and was able to get my accommodation by speaking with her supervisor, which happened to be a Caucasian woman, and she was more understanding than my fellow Afro-American friend. She understood and quickly was able to accommodate me without any issue. And her boss that I had to go over and speak with, she was to the point of tears that I had to go through this kind of back channel to get my accommodation approved. So in the private sector, I've had some fixes there, but that came at a cost in the private sector because I did this. And my friend Kristen is well aware of this, but what I'm also going to elaborate more on my next Citizens Roundtable is when you do stuff in the private sector to get the accommodation you need, there's consequences and repercussions of that. So I did that, and that kind of, what I'll say, torpedoed my ability to get promoted. Now, they're basically, once I did that, management made it known that they knew that I went over their head to get that accommodation, which I shouldn't have had to do it. I went to the proper channel, spoke with my supervisor first. Then she said she spoke with HR, nothing happened. Then I had to speak with HR, and da-da-da-da-da. Then I finally got it approved. So I went to the proper channel. Because I did that, that just torpedoed my chances of getting my promotion, my raise from $18.50 an hour to $21 an hour. And that basically just put like a black mark in my file. So that when time came around for me to get my promotion, even though in this job I was the number one seller, and I was basically 2-3 months in a row, I sold more Medicare products and healthcare products than the over 1,000 employees in the department. I single-handedly outsold everybody, and didn't make no excuses for it. But because I needed an accommodation, that torpedoed my chances to get, a raise. And then, long story short, they just basically, it was frustrating, and I didn't want to deal with the office politics in that company, and I left.
And that's what happened. And that's what happened to me in the public sector. Like I was on low man on the totem pole. I qualified to basically be a lead designer, if not art director, but lead designer at the time, because I came in with 2 years of experience as a designer anyway. And after 2 years of figuring out the lay of the land and just being a good employee, I started applying for more positions. And then it was like, and they were like, well, you're not that you're not good enough, but your grade was too low. So when I went to HR and when I went to my boss and stuff and my creative director, and when I fought the system, and I didn't even go to the EEOC, which I should have, because there was ableism violations there. I got blackballed, but I was still there. And then when it was a situation for me to, when the rift happened, no one was saving my job. Like, there were people that they figured out, they found ways to keep them in the company right away. I wasn't one of those people. So we bring these stories up to mention that when you fight for accommodations, and even if you go through the proper channels, like they said I didn't, but Kingsley did. When you go through the proper channels, and you have first line management when they don't hear what you're saying or when they're unresponsive, and then you have to go over their head or you have to go through other channels. Office politics and office etiquette gets in the way, and then they're like, oh, we can not necessarily fire you, but there's retribution that happens like right away, and it's like you really shouldn't have to. The ADA been out since 1990. And one of the parts of the ADA is that reasonable accommodation. You shouldn't have to face retribution like Kingsley has when you're trying to get an accommodation. You know what I'm saying? And it's like that's something that we talk about, but there's really no protection on it. You know what I'm saying? And it was frustrating for both of us to try to get promoted, because basically we lost our jobs because I lost my job because I felt like I was being discriminated against because of my disability and because I was black. And he lost his job because he asked for an accommodation and they felt some type of way because of the way he did it. Even though he did it in a completely professional way, and even though he hit the proper channels initially, no one was responding.
Yeah. And so that's a question I want to throw out to the audience here, because in the state of my right here, but I'm going to pose, as I'm going through this, I want to pose questions to the audience here, and I definitely do want to get, the responses, and I want to see what you think. What do you guys think out there when you have an issue like you need accommodation, in order to be able to communicate with your rider, you need software in order to be able to perform a little bit better on your job? Have you all had to go through this, or how would y'all handle it? Would y'all have gone through the same channels, and how would you do it? Have you faced this, and what did you do about it? And was anybody receptive to what was going on? And so that's my question. And hopefully I can respond to see what you think. But that's just what we face here, and that was so hard for me, because private sector jobs, I like that job. As a matter of fact, that was probably one of the private sector jobs that I could have seen myself staying at for quite a while. Because one, the people there, before were then another thing too, the company merged. And, I don't know if you guys have been in companies that have merged together and then became one big kind of juggernaut or something. So before this company merged, it had a family atmosphere. The management was great. The recruiting the employees were really good, and they understood before they merged. Once they merged, everything just sort of went downhill. I mean, that's where I started running into problems, with accommodations and everything. Things just weren't fun anymore, and they just didn't really care. And that's when I ran into that roadblock, and me and my friend Kristen have both experienced that. So, with all that being said, then, again, I'm one that when I feel like something like this has happened, I believe that we as disabled people, shouldn't just keep quiet and not make our voices heard. So, like I said, I filed a claim of discrimination because of what happened in that situation, but more so in the public sector company or agency that I was at that was supposed to be more accepting. I filed a claim of discrimination. It's been going through the channels. And then what I've also found in my journey, this is interesting, is that advocacy groups that are supposed to be like out there and help. Again, I understand that there's all these different advocacy groups, and they only got all their little things that they want to focus on. And I think that they mean well, but this is what I've been noticing in my little journey as I filed this claim against this public agency. Is that when they have their own little things that they're working on, some of these organizations, I'm seeing they work on housing accessibility, they work on transportation, they work on building access, which is great. But like I've been mentioning, and what Chris has been saying, is all these organizations are fractured into their own little compartments, and that's all they focus on.
Yeah.
So when you have an issue that's coming up, like my issue that is dealing with accommodation in a federal type job environment, a lot of these advocacy groups that you would think that might be willing to help you, they're going to say their number one go-to line is, we have limited resources, and that's not what really we focus on. So what I've seen is,
although some of those organizations are known to use guerrilla tactics to get the job done. Like they will protest their butts off in front of places and get arrested, but they got limited resources. Okay.
Right. So I mean, they got limited resources, but they're doing protesting and getting arrested. So they're using their limited resources to focus on what they want to focus on.
I'm not hating on like that those particular organizations. One of which in particular, I'm very happy that they do what they do, because I wouldn't catch regular transportation. I wouldn't be able to catch regular transportation without them, without what they did in the 80s and the 90s and stuff. But I think your frustration is that, and it's something that I've known for about 10 years. With the civil rights movement, with the initial civil rights movement in the 60s, that black people, our grandparents and great grandparents, and some parents, what they had to deal with, their whole thing was, we got to get rid of the Jim Crow situation. And we were talking about this last night, actually. There were two camps. There was the integration camp, and then there was a separatist camp. Malcolm and the Nation of Islam and Elijah Muhammad, they were like, okay, black man, you're in this foreign land. Let's make the best of it in regards to, like, don't deal with the white people because they haven't really treated us right, and let's build our own communities. And then you have Martin Luther King Jr. He was like, let's integrate, let's end the Jim Crow laws, let's integrate, and let's get the same access as everybody else. My contention is, in the disability rights movement, now, because we've been so used to, not being able to go places in the 60s and in the 70s and stuff, like, accessibility was, there are people that couldn't get out their house. So what agencies were doing, or what it was all about getting in the house and community living. And it seems like that is really still an issue, and we all have like it's basically that, or it's working rights and it's healthcare rights. We don't really have a staunch, because there's ableism, and there's a whole bunch of ableism, and there's a whole bunch of issues that we have, but we don't have, the leadership is fractured. Like everybody has their own pet like fight that they have, and it just seems like for guys like us, for me and Kingsley, the workers, whether it's whether it's working class or whether it's upper class jobs, you know what I'm saying? Like there's not a lot of agencies fighting for us. Like we're kind of just out. Like Kingsley's kind of just out here. Like I'm just kind of out here figuring this out. We're out here figuring this out, and we go to like major organizations, and they're just like, "Oh, we don't do that." And it's like, okay, but what about us?
Right, exactly. And then you're being ping pong like myself from one spot to another, and it's just like, these organizations are offering sympathy, but they're not really giving you a solution. I mean, my situation, I'm having private results through the public sector agencies still out there. And, I'm just like a one-man show. I'm still fighting it, but I can't get no help here. You got all this advocacy, it's great, but everybody's doing their own thing, but I still can't get the help that I need.
And when it comes to employment, and when specifically what you're like, because you tangling with the federal government, there is no you're not tangling with a small company or whatever. You're tangling with the federal government, and it just seems like the agencies that we know of are just kind of like, we don't really do that.
Yeah, and I honestly think it's because, they see I'm like Tiny Tim and I'm trying to face Goliath and agent in the federal government, and they're like, well, we can't help you, Tiny Tim, because you're facing Goliath here, to use a biblical term, and they can't do it. They're thinking that, I'm going to get squashed, or they just don't see a way to really help, because they're thinking it's the big bad federal government, and they don't want to exert any resources to help me in this struggle. So again, my thing is that right? There should be some organization out there or somebody that's willing to help in this fight. Because just because it's a federal government agency doesn't always mean that they're above the law or they can do no wrong. I felt that I was treated some kind of way, and just so that the audience out there knows, and I'm not the only one. This is not just me, just airing my grapes or sour grapes.
Airing your grievances.
Airing my grievances. It's actually in my journey. This is where you learn too. When you go on journeys like this, where you have to go through a long road like this, you find that there are allies along the way. There are other people besides myself that have been discriminated against, and have also faced the sort of, the scourge of just discrimination that I've been facing. And they're from different walks of life, different ages, and these people that are facing it are in the government as well. Mm-hmm. I was forced out because I made my opinion known, and my needs, I let them know what I needed, and they just didn't want to accommodate me, which is what they were supposed to do, mm-hmm. according with the Americans with Disabilities Act, which again I'll go into in my next roundtable. And so these people in the government, they're going through it right now. One of which, she's been in the government for 20 years, and she's only GS4 because she made her grievance known, and the organization agency has done everything in their power to keep her at a low level. And the
GS4 is sort of, I don't want to say entry level, but a low level.
Pretty much.
Grade, right?
Yeah, low level, almost entry level.
Mm-hmm.
And she's been there 20 years. It'll be 21 years from, next year. And she's at almost at an entry level position after 20 years. Simply because she let her grievance be known. Then there's another lady.
Yeah. I know people like that. They're just I'm gonna say something, and then it's just, all right, we're just gonna keep you here forever.
Yep. And then you're just stuck. So I mean, my thing is, I'm just fighting because I feel that this is a fight that needs to be needs to be waged,
Mm-hmm.
But my thing is looking for allies in this fight. I'm finding that I have allies in the government that are also going through some issues, but looking for counsel, like legal help, or looking for other advocates to sort of come to my aid here. It's hard to find again because all these advocacy groups are so fractured. They're all focusing on their own little thing, and I'm thinking, isn't there?
And we don't want to discount the work that they're doing, but it's just like,
Yeah.
but it's just like, I guess he feels like, and I understand his point. He feels like, okay, there are other issues that we face here, and at the very least, you should be able to give me some information. Like I've been helping Kingsley for a few years now with this, because I'm kind of, I don't want to say I'm in the advocacy space. Like I know advocates. Like I'm on Twitter. You know what I'm saying? Like I read articles about stuff about like when people write about certain things. So it's like I've been trying to get him information. I told him about certain agencies, and Google is a wonderful pathway to information. And then it's like when he comes back and he tells me, he's like, man, that agency didn't do anything. They don't want to help me. And it's like, wait a minute, but they supposed to be like the agency to help people. And it's just like when it comes to like employment, no one really wants to help him. You know what I'm saying? And it's like sometimes we can be like disabled Rambos and just go ah, and then sometimes it's like, okay, we need an army, man. Like I need guns, man.
Yeah.
Where's the guns at? Where's the army? Where's the soldiers at?
Right. I need some more troops. Where are the troops at? So it's like I'm a soldier of one.
Yeah, we're trying to be like sometimes even Leonidas had 300 people with him. You know what I'm saying? Like we can't just be like solo. Like you said, we can't just be soldiers of one here. Sometimes we end up being that way, but there's strength in numbers, man. So I think the purpose of this podcast, the initial purpose of this podcast, is to tell his story. Is to tell his story.
But that's my story. Or disabled people's story.
Yeah.
My story is just some little piece of it. But,
yeah, but
my story.
Right.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying like to tell your story and to open up a larger issue facing us, but and see if we can get some help. See if we can get some help for you. See if we can get some some soldiers in the fight. Because I'm pretty sure we ain't the only ones, black, white, Asian, whatever. I'm pretty sure we're not the only ones that have faced discrimination like this in the workforce. And I'm pretty sure either some of us have had success in fighting the good fight, and some of us haven't, and we don't know what to do. So part one of this, and I think, unless I'm wrong here, I think we've pretty much covered everything in regards to that, was to get your story out, and it's like a clarion call for help. But the other part of this is you mentioned that you wanted to do a disabled roundtable about disability issues, where you wanted to start this. You wanted to get me and a couple other disabled budding advocates, in the fray here. Could you go into that a little bit as we close?
Yeah, okay. So like I alluded to this earlier, this is going to be, I'm going to do like a weekly show, maybe once or twice a week, and we're going to talk about a variety of issues. The next topic, this is just a little glimpse into, just one of the things. But another issue that I'm going to be talking about in my, State of the Roundtable, which I'll bring on guests like Kristen and some other fellow disabled people, is the next one I want to look at is the ADA. It's been around. How is it performing? What do you think about it? Do you think it's done what it was set out to do? If there's room for improvement, have you found that the ADA has helped you in your particular job? If it hasn't helped you, what improvements do you think might need to be made? So that's going to be our next issue we're going to talk about here in a few weeks, possibly next week or the week after, when I talk to the other few people I'm going to have on my show. But yeah, this is going to be my State of the Roundtable. It's going to be, like I said, a weekly thing, maybe once or twice a week, where we talk about these issues, the ADA, employment, healthcare, probably dating and relationships, things of that nature. How that in today's society, what obstacles do you come up across? What solutions are out there? What you guys think out there in the audience? How we can really impact this thing to impact these situations and make a change, or how we can bring these organizations that are out there, focusing on their little niche in this world, how maybe we can pool our resources to work together. Because what I'm saying is, what my friend here, Christian, is saying is, we're not saying that the work that they're doing out there is bad. No. I think it's actually pretty good. The problem is, since we're all fractured, there's that old saying, together we stand, divided we fall. So the more divided we are, we're splintering off, and we're eventually going to, just collapse because we're so divided. Everything's just going to collapse, and it's not going to lead us to our ultimate goal, which is more inclusion, better job opportunities both in the public and private sector. So my thing is, we need to come together so we're not so divided and just splintered off. Because then the more divided we are, then our power is weakened when we're separated. And I don't think that people really understand that. And so I really want this to be a forum to where we can talk about these issues and come up with some solid ways to really resolve the other issues that are out there. Like the issue I'm facing, and I'm sure other people have faced, but don't know where to turn and aren't really getting the help that they need. Because I've reached out to some people that are actually, in this, know about the EEO process, the EOC process, which is the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission process you go through when you go through when you show that you've been discriminated against. I've reached out to lawyers through the help of my buddy Kingsley here, and to get their input and get their assistance in fighting my issue that I'm going through with this agency. And I never got a response from this lawyer. She's in Baltimore, 15 months as she is, and she never responded. Now, again, I'm not going to say that. I'm sure she has some, she's probably working on something, but I mean, hey, if somebody reaches out to you, the at least common courtesy, say, oh, I got your message, I'm so sorry this is happening, I can't really help you, but, here's another avenue you can go down. This common courtesy.
What we want to do before he starts digging in a hole, because I don't want to, because I'm just, look, I've been knowing this dude for almost 20 years. This dude is one of my best friends. You know what I'm saying? And one of the reasons why me and him are so close is he's a year older than me, and we're both black and disabled, and we're both black and disabled men. And being brothers, disabled or not, black men in this country, we got it rough. And disabled black men, we got it rougher. You know what I'm saying? We do, because there's stuff that y'all don't have to deal with. So me and him we're allies. We're not only friends, we're allies. Whenever there's an issue, like when I was struggling after I got let go from my government position, he was already in the private sector, and he was like, he was already in the private sector, and he was doing well, and he was like, hey man, come over here. Like, get out of where you was, because I think I was making like $9 an hour. Get out of where you were and come over here. And I was like, no man, I don't know. What about the typing test? And he was like, no man, this is better. They got you. Come over here. Like it was like, all right. So I know the normal ableism nonsense that I deal with, I don't have to deal with. So we look out for each other. We make a point to look out for each other. Because a lot of times, I've met other disabled cats that don't do that. You know what I'm saying? They say that they do, but they really don't. It's like they always try to like, no man, you got to do it this way, and they don't really lead you anywhere. So what I hope for this roundtable that's going to be starting under his platform, which this is going to be under Moses Resource Center, right?
Yes, Moses Resource Center, yes. Which is my company that I started some time ago. So this is just going to be another avenue for us to really, for me to really reach out to my disabled population and try to come up with solutions. Again,
and what I'm hoping too is for this to be not only a place where we can discuss solutions, but a place to where the listener can come to and be like, hey, because at the end of the interview, or the roundtable rather, we're gonna get contact information. So if somebody is going through what they go through, they can listen to the roundtable. They can listen to this podcast or that particular podcast and say, hey, so and so is part of this organization. So and so does this. Maybe I can contact this person, and then maybe we can go from there. Because a lot of us are just out here shooting in the dark, hoping that something sticks.
Right. And I want my disabled people to know that there's help out there. You just have to. It may be hard to find it at first, but if you just keep going, it's like a little hit in the could. You just got to be like a pickaxe and a thinking. You just got to keep pushing and being persistent, and you'll be able to get the help that you need. And so that's why I'm hoping that this can be a beacon of hope for my disabled brethren, and just let you know that there are people out here that can help you, and that you're not alone. And if you just want to, let me know about the issue that you're dealing with, at least I can be the shoulder to cry on, and give you some words of encouragement. But yeah, I really want this to be something that be a blessing to my disabled people, because I know if I went through it, I know a lot of other people. I'm one person, my friend Chris is one person, but if we've went through it, then I'm sure it's like we all have there's going to be a common ground that a lot of us have gone through it. It's just a lot of us are scared to speak out about it because we're thinking we might be seen as weak or less than because we're voicing our frustration. But I just want people to
or radical, because I get the radical part. I get the radical portion of this.
He gets the radical part. They think he's angry. They think my friend Christian is angry and wants to hurt this and that. He may sound angry, but no, he's really
it's the voice. I'm telling you, it's the voice.
It is the voice. Angry man, he's crazy, but which really got it backwards. I'm more of the kind of got a little.
Yeah, like he's the radical person. He's the radical person, like privately. Hence this. But like when you see him, he's smiling and all like, "Hey, my name is Kingsley," and everybody loves him. And then I come on the scene, and I'm like this brooding person with sitting angry face, and everybody thinks that I want to punch walls and start trouble and stuff. And it's like, no, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it takes them a while to get to know him.
Yeah.
Like, you're Kingsley's friend, So
right. And Kingsley's friend is cool. Kingsley's friend is cool, and he's a nice dude. But yeah, man. So, what's the name of the round table? When is it going to start effectively, and how can people contact you?
Oh, sure. It's the State of the State of the Disabled Roundtable. So, State of the Disabled Roundtable by Kingsley Ogbogu. I'm the owner and founder of Moses Resource Center. Definitely, if you want to contact me, you can reach out to me by email. I usually use better with that. My email is going to be moses.resource.center@gmail.com. You can reach out to me by email. And then also...
State that one more time, okay?
Sure. It's Moses, MOSES resource, like resource, dot center, CENTER, ogbogu@gmail.com.
Okay.
So I usually better than get at me with email. So,
And it'll go right to you.
yeah. It'll go right to me. Yeah, my email and all that's already set up for people to contact me. Or you can also call me at my hotline that I have set up, and I'll leave your message that way, and let me give you my direct line here, phone number that I set up for people to contact me. And this is going to be for those people that are maybe needing some resources as far as, maybe how to apply for SSI, SSDI, and also some referrals to possible jobs in the community.
And if you're an advocate listening to this, like if this becomes like viral or whatever, and you've heard this and you're like, oh, I can help him, give him information. Let him know what he can do here, because there are these situations that we talked about today. They're still pending, and he's still out here with his with the 2 Lost Strand crutches and like the Black Rambo, Black disabled Rambo fighting a good fight, and he needs soldiers.
Right. Yeah, I need soldiers in this fight, or just somebody. I just want to hear what y'all have to say.
All right. So what's that number?
My phone number. You can also find my phone number. If I'm not available, just leave a message for me. It's 469-596-0999. So 0999.
Okay.
So that's my.
And that's your business. And that's your business number.
That's my business number. Yes.
Okay. Cool.
And I'm also listed in the business pages. So if you go into the phone book, you will find me in the business section of the phone book, the 411 listings, and you'll see me as MCR Holdings. That is my company, MCR Holdings. You'll find me in the business section as well under my phone number, 469-596-0999. But again, email will probably be the best way to reach me. Shoot me your comments, your suggestions, your thoughts, opinions.
I'm trying to get this man to be on Twitter, because I'm telling him if he gets on Twitter, get on Twitter, dude. That way, like a lot of the advocates, because that's kind of where we all kind of congregate. So yeah, man, you need a Moses Resource Center, or you need your own personal Twitter, just to connect with everybody. But go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be getting on Twitter. I'll be getting on Twitter soon here, and then also probably get Twitter. I'll be going then probably on YouTube, and then have my little home podcast thing. Probably be doing a blog too. So yeah, I'm gonna be doing the whole 9-9. So I'll be on Twitter.
So the next the first official roundtable, because this isn't really one. The first official roundtable should be what, in 2 weeks or a week?
Yeah, about 2 weeks. Yeah, give about 2 weeks. Yeah.
Okay.
About 2 weeks or so. There's some other people I want to bring on too, so I'll see if they're going to be available. So I give myself a little time so I can bring them on. But yeah, this was a little teaser. This is a little teaser of what's to come. So this is, you can say this is the.
This is the prequel to the roundtable, man.
This is the prequel.
But yeah, man, like I haven't really done an accessibility podcast in like a couple of years. So this will be like my 3rd one, and I'm hoping to get a little bit more, but we've kind of been focused on sports. But yeah, like a little bit of advocacy in dipped into your sports conversation, brother. It was a pleasure. We can banter back and forth about disability rights for days, and that's normally what we do. But we wanted to get one of these. We wanted to get one of these on air again, so we can kind of get your story out there and get this project, which I'm really excited for. And like I said, man, I hope that it turns into like a resource for us to get information, because sometimes it's harder for us to get information when we just by ourselves. You know what I'm saying? So other advocates, when we started getting this going, Please come when he starts getting the round table going. Please come and like so we can kind of get better. Because quite honestly, I didn't really know about a lot of disability rights issues and stuff because we all stay in our little pockets until I started getting out there. So maybe when we start doing this, we start getting a little bit more knowledgeable. We help each other out.
Right, definitely, and that's my goal there.